Hello again, juniors. Welcome to week 13 of our remote learning, and we are continuing with the fifth commandment. So we're on part B of You Shall Not Kill. All right, so for this week, we are going to define and explain the sin of scandal. We will summarize the importance of respecting the health of self and others. We'll summarize the value of science, technology, and bodily integrity. And we'll summarize the church's teachings on war and peace. So I think you're going to enjoy this. All right, so let's just remind ourselves why the fifth commandment exists. Because human life is sacred, and that's because it involves the creative action of God. It remains forever in a special relationship with God, the Creator, who is its only purpose and end. So we have to be respectful of life. Okay, so now where we left off last week was we introduced the idea of scandal, but we didn't go into any details. So scandal is an attitude or behavior which leads another to do evil. The person who gives scandal becomes his neighbor's tempter and damages virtue and integrity. He may even draw his brother into spiritual death. Scandal is a grave offense if, by deed or omission, another is deliberately led into a grave offense. So we can cause someone to sin on accident. Maybe we brag about something, or we're just, we're talking all kinds of stuff, and all of a sudden this person decides, let's say we're gossiping about somebody, and we say, oh my gosh, I can't believe she did this, and yada 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 yada. So now this person, maybe out of an effort to impress us or to gain our favor, decides to just go along and hate this person or spread rumors about this person. Well, you might not have intended to make that person commit a sin, but your actions were irresponsible and it caused that person to sin. So that can be a venial way of sinning. But a more serious way of sinning would be if you deliberately encourage or try to cause someone to sin. I'll give you an example. I know somebody when we were growing up whose parents taught them to shoplift. When money was tight or they just didn't want to pay for something, they would teach their little children to grab stuff off the shelf and hide it in their mom's purse or things like that. So in this case, the person who was responsible for the morality of, the moral upbringing of their child was causing this person to sin, and they did so deliberately, which is a grave offense. So let's look at the last bullet point. Anyone who uses the power at his disposal in such a way that it leads others to do wrong becomes guilty of scandal and responsible for the evil that he has directly or indirectly encouraged. All right, now let's talk about respect for health. Health is a gift from God that must be cared for. It is part of caring for the common good. So if you have obligations to people, your parents rely on you, your children will one day rely on you, your classmates rely on you, then you have to take care of yourself, because you're not an island. You are not just an individual. You are part of a community. And so caring for your health is part of caring for the common good. Temperance, that's the virtue of moderation, not doing too much or too little of something, requires us to avoid every kind of excess, which would include abuse of food, alcohol, tobacco, medicine, etc. It is a grave offense to endanger the safety of others by excessive alcohol and speed on the road, air, or at sea. I think it's really interesting and important that the bishops included this in the catechism. This tells us that putting substances in our body which can alter our judgment is a grave offense, especially if we combine it with operating heavy machinery that could easily endanger other people. The use of drugs inflicts serious damage on one's health and life. The use of drugs for non-therapeutic reasons is a grave offense. So people always ask questions about, well, why is it a sin to take drugs? Well, it's a sin for a couple of reasons. But the most important is because the catechism is pretty clear. We're not supposed to. It's a grave offense against health and life. More specifically, and maybe even a little bit more practically, we have to be ready at a moment's notice to be who God calls us to be. Let's say, for instance, you think, no big deal, I'm at home, it's a Saturday night, I'm going to get drunk, or I'm going to do drugs and I'm going to get high. But let's say that in that moment, somebody needs your help, somebody who you love and who relies on you. If you are not able to answer that call because you have decided to alter your state in such a way that makes you unable to help, you have done something very seriously wrong. And I would love to have a conversation with you about this, so please send me emails or let's Zoom. Okay, moving on. Life, science, and technology. Scientific, medical, or psychological experiments on human individuals or groups can contribute to healing the sick and advancement of public health. So, a lot of people are surprised when they hear this. They think that human experimentation is morally wrong in all cases. Well, it's not necessarily true. If we are doing it responsibly, this can greatly increase our survival and it can help cure people who are suffering from terrible diseases. Science and technology are precious resources when placed at the service of man and promote his integral development for the benefit of all. So, what's really important here is this next point. But science and technology must respect the dignity of the human person and God's plan. So, we can't be experimenting on people for things that are ridiculous or that don't further the common good. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure you'll all have some fun coming up with some wild ones. Organ donation after death is a noble and meritorious act, and it is to be encouraged as an expression of generous solidarity, so long as consent is given and the body is treated with respect. So it's not a buffet, but if we are treating the body with respect when we donate our organs after death, we are actually performing a great service. Bodily integrity. Kidnapping, hostage-taking, terrorism, and torture are all grave offenses which expose people to intolerable pressures and violate their human dignity. These are not okay under any circumstances. These practices, no matter what their purpose, are not necessary to maintain order, and they violate justice and charity. Respect for the dead. The bodies of the dead must be treated with respect and charity, in faith and hope of the resurrection. The burial of the dead is a corporal work of mercy. So that's why we have funerals. That is why we bury the dead. It's why we just don't throw people in a ditch. It's because the body is a gift from God. And even though the soul is no longer with the body at the time of death, it was still a beautiful creation and deserves the respect that it's entitled to. So let's talk about options when you die. Some people decide to get buried, some people decide to get cremated, and there's a lot of people out there who say that the church is against cremation. That's not the case. The church permits cremation provided that it does not demonstrate a denial of the faith in the resurrection of the body. And in almost everybody I've talked to who wants to be cremated, nobody says this. So in other words, as long as if you want to be cremated, you are permitted to do that as long as you're not saying to the world or to the church, this is because I do not believe that I will resurrect. No, you are going to resurrect. That's part of the church's teachings. So again, cremation is permissible as long as it doesn't deny faith in the resurrection. Peace and war. I should have called that War and Peace. That would have sounded better. Anyways, so let's look at this nice little quote here. It says, to desire vengeance in order to do evil to someone who should be punished is illicit. That means it's wrong. You can't do it. Revenge is never okay. Revenge is very different than a desire for justice. Justice seeks to correct, not to punish. Last week, we talked about the purpose of punishment. The purpose of punishment has to have a medicinal purpose. It has to rehabilitate and it has to fix the problem. It is not about revenge or punishing the person to make them suffer. Peace is not merely the absences of war. It is the work of justice and the effect of charity. So peace just doesn't mean, well, we're not at war with anybody, so this is peace. No, peace is an ongoing effort, and it means that we are working towards justice for all people, and that only happens when we love each other. So that's what it means when we say the effect of charity. All citizens and all governments are obliged to work for the avoidance of war. However, governments cannot be denied the right of lawful self-defense once all peace efforts have failed. So war can be legitimate so long as all other measures and attempts at peace have failed. So let's get into some more details here. There are very strict conditions for legitimate defense by military force. So here are the conditions. The damage inflicted by the aggressor, that means whoever is attacking you or threatening your peace, the damage inflicted by the aggressor on the nation or community of nations must be lasting, grave, and certain. So when you're examining the threat against you, you are looking to see whether or not this threat is a long-term, lasting threat, whether it's a serious threat, and whether it is certain, a definite, imminent threat. Another condition is that all other means of putting an end to it must have been shown to be either impractical or ineffective, meaning you've tried everything and it's either not working or it just doesn't make sense. Another condition is that there must be serious prospects of success. If you've got, I don't know, this is a stupid example, but if you've got 5 people up against 1,000 people, sending those people in to defend themselves against the 5,000, or I can't even remember what number I said, it's pointless. There is not a serious prospect of success there. And then finally, the use of arms must not produce evils and disorders graver than the evil to be eliminated. So the war at arms is something that the church is very serious about. It's an unfortunate condition of our humanity at this point in our lives. So we can't be producing weapons that would produce greater evils than what we are trying to defend ourselves against. And so that concludes our teachings on the 5th commandment. I hope you found that it was a lot more extensive than you might have anticipated. I really wish we were in class to discuss this because there's so much more about the military conditions and the death penalty that I would have loved to talk about you with in person. But hopefully we can cover that in some of our Zoom. I really enjoy this part of the process, and I miss you guys. What can I say? So if you have any questions or any trouble with this week's lessons, please email me. That is it. Thank you very much, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye.